Chances are, as you've settled in on a long weekend off, you've thought about dusting off an old console, maybe popping in one of your favorite games for an afternoon of fun. But what if, on that afternoon, you could enjoy not only one of your favorites, not just 2, 5, or even 10, but 16 games of 16-bit spectacularity? And what if you could see not only one person take those titles down, but a dozen people going head-to-head to see who would stand above them all? How you doing today? I'm YoBGS, and we're going to throw it back to the 90s for a race so big that we are going to need some blast processing for it. Of course, I'm talking about the SEGA 16. This is the speedrunning community coming together several times a year to throw these all-day mega marathon races. They really have to be seen to be believed. People coming together to help each other learn the runs, improve runs, have fun doing what we all love. This, to me, is speedrunning at its absolute best. And this time, it was the SEGA crew's turn to host this race, and it was otherworldly. Anyway, the field for the SEGA 16 was a who's who of Genesis runners. I mean, for real. We had runners from Sweden. We got runners from Canada, Brazil, even Illinois came out for this thing to try their hand at being a SEGA superstar. The favorite in this SEGA 16 had been known from the beginning. It's Dagron. Now, if you're not familiar, they may as well switch the font on his speedrun.com page to gold, because that is all that is covering his page. It's just world record after world record. I think maybe I saw like a second place in there somewhere, but on race day, the question becomes, will he be able to clutch out the entire run? By the way, I want to take a minute here to kind of shout out Shanaberry Blast, Apollo 22237, and Booster Shane. They did the pre-show to this. They also did the commentary during, which, by the way, ended up being like 6+ hours of commentary. I have no idea how they managed to pull that off, and I say that because, get this, while the Big 20 NES had 6 screens of speedrunning awesomeness, the SEGA 16 bumped that number up to 12. Hold on to your buttons, because we are getting right into it. So, right out of the box, we've got Golden Axe. Now you beat the whole thing on arcade mode, boom, you move on to the next game, right? We're already seeing here what sets the SEGA 16 apart from other big races, because you get games of every different genre in this race. Starting off with a beat 'em up is kind of tricky, because a beat 'em up only exists to lose you time. If you nail all the tech, if you do all the stuff you're supposed to do, then you're going to be finishing about at the same time as everybody else. But if you start messing up the tech, you're going to start to get in your own head a little bit, and that is where the time can really start to seep away. And don't rest your thumbs yet, because after Golden Axe, we go into Kid Chameleon. It's an adventure platformer. You turn into different characters, but the tornado is going to be the key to going fast in this one. And it was actually here that there was a runner who was putting on a clinic up to this point, Beetle111. They ended up dropping like 10 minutes of time, because basically Beetle lost to the tornado power-up and decided it would just be faster to go back to get it again than it would be to try and figure out the rest of the run without the route that they had practiced. This next game, by the way, if you can hear the music under me, is high-flying action at its best. If you blink, you're going to miss this segment of the run. Not to mention, you remember earlier I was talking about Dagron? He's not just top tier. He's the entire tier for this run. Needless to say, this is where Dag got out to a solid lead. But is he going to be able to hold on to it the whole way, like we saw with Yogi in the Big 20? After 2 platformers, you might be thinking the race needs some variety. After all, YoBGS, you mentioned all the different genres earlier. Well, we're going to take to the skies here for Fire Shark. Now, it's your standard shmup. Basically, you get the power-ups, you improve your speed, you bump up your damage a little bit, take down all the enemies through Stage 5, you're good to move on. The speed tech in shmups, though, is really interesting, because not only do you want to not die, but it's all about finding the most efficient way to clear screens to get to the big boss. And then once you get to the big boss, you have to take them down as quickly as possible so that, you avoid their scary patterns and can instantly move on to the next phase. It's a lot easier than it sounds.
Hi, future YoBGS here. I clearly meant to say it is much harder than it sounds. Back to your regularly scheduled racing.
Tell me something, how can a game about two of the most crass and crude 90s personalities possibly be a bad game? You ever played Beavis and Butthead? The game for the race is literally only clearing one small segment of the overall speedrun, but to beat this part, you have to use a hover round to outrun a rotund cowboy while avoiding medical waste. Yeah. If you rented this game, there's a chance you spent your entire weekend trying to do just this segment. I mean, it's no joke. Also, High Seas Havoc. I've been loving this game. It's a Data East game, and I'm a fan of Data East because I'm a Joe and Mac runner myself. But Data East games have some really particular quirks. And if you watch the platform action in High Seas Havoc, you can see part of what makes the race so tricky. Like, not only do you have to know High Seas Havoc, for example, but you have to remember how Havoc controls relative to, like, Pulseman. And they're on completely opposite ends of the spectrum. Now, somebody who controls a little similar to Havoc in High Seas Havoc is either Mickey or Minnie. Quick, Mickey or Minnie, comment down below. And I say that because this was one of the biggest decisions chat saw made by runner after runner in the Great Circus Mystery. You could pick either Mickey or Minnie. We found out later that there's not really a difference in the tech between the two, but, you know, chat memes being chat memes, we kind of had fun keeping track of who was picking whom, and it was a lot of fun. But basically, one of the biggest things that could hurt you in this game was RNG. This is like this turtle boss, for example, and it stays in its shell over and over and over again, and you just wait for it to pop its head up. But you can lose a lot of time, and given Dagron's lead, it may slow him down just a little bit. Well, that being said, it's not like Dagron had built this multi-game lead or anything. It was just every time JKL or Sheem Gabriel would hit like 2 or 3 really difficult tricks, Dagron would come through with like 3 tricks, right? And then extend his lead just a little bit more. And as we moved on to Rocket Knight Adventures, which, by the way, is a game with awesome visuals and incredible music, like, go out of your way to play this if you're looking for some old school games you may have missed, because you will not regret it. But one thing you'd start to notice on the screen of 12 runners was the fact that the leaders in this race were finally starting to separate a little bit from the pack. And it makes sense because we're halfway through the run at this point, moving on, getting in our Ferrari, heading to cruise the beach. It is Outrun on Genesis. Now, this game was all about kind of determining which direction you want to go. There are a bunch of different endings in this one. Unfortunately, the only one we really saw was the A ending, which means like take every left turn at a fork that you can. And it's kind of a bummer because there are a lot of different really cool endings in this game based on your route. And I think they're all equally awesome. So it's another game you should go back and play if you are looking for an awesome game and you've got the time to go check them out. Absolutely give Outrun a look. And by the way, it's not that hard either. So it's just one you can kind of knock out in a little bit. Now, it also wouldn't be a Genesis marathon without a Sonic game. And this race has got one. It's Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. What? It's got Robotnik. It's Sonic Cannon. Also, this proved to be the great equalizer here because RNGesus did not look favorably on Dagron, and Sheem was able to take the lead as the two of them began to pull even farther away from both JKL and Narblast. And we've had a little bit of everything at this point, so let's dip back into the beat 'em up well a little bit for Mystical Fighter. Now, it's a really unique take on the genre, I feel. It's all about kind of clustering enemies, and you want to use as little time as possible, obviously, to kind of knock out all the different enemies rather than jumping back and forth with every jump costing you time. It honestly reminded me of the art style of like a Splatterhouse because it was these giant sprites that looked really cool, like super detailed, and I was a big fan of this, even though I hadn't seen it coming into the race. Okay, now I watched this next game because I watched the entire race. I still had to Google what the heck Gain Ground was. Apparently, it's an action strategy arcade port. Yeah, let's see you run that, Nintendo. Just saying. It consisted of basically moving all of your troops to the end and either going through or going around the enemy. And as for speed tech, some runners went with the Ninja Turtle strats here. What I mean is, they killed off their extra units so that they only had one left, and then you only have to move that one to the end. If you have 2 or 3 troops, you gotta move them all, which is gonna waste your time. It's a legitimate strategy, assuming you don't game over, because if you do, just gonna have to do it all again with all the troops, which doesn't really save you that much time. At this point, Sheem and Dag were trading the lead back and forth. There were also some rivalries that were developing in the middle of the pack. I gotta shout out Cypherin, who's a really awesome streamer. I found Cypherin after GDQ, like he got the SGDQ raid, and it was one of the coolest streams I've ever gotten to hang out in for a little bit. With the 12 screens, it made it easy to see across the pack like where different runners were, and to kind of, you know, like get away from the leaders for a little bit to see some of the drama that unfolded in the middle. And with X-Men 2, The Clone Wars, it was easy to see who was at the top of their game, because this is precise platforming, beat-em-up action, and it's mind-boggling at this point to me, because this isn't an easy game, let alone being 13 games into a race. All right, so admittedly, I had never seen Beyond Oasis before, but now I definitely want to see more of it. On speedrun.com, the times for this game range between 40 minutes and 6 hours, so you know there's some tech and like all sorts of different cool things as a part of this run. I love these races because you can learn about these awesome new games that, like, they have these cozier communities, I guess you'd call it, and they're a lot of fun, but you never would have found them otherwise unless you just happen to randomly, you know, pick the game out of like your EverDrive or something. As far as the leaderboard at this point, it's still anybody's race, assuming those anybody's are either Sheem or Dag. And heading into Mega Man 3, it's going to take a pretty big slip up for Dagron to lose his lead. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yo, Mega Man 3? I thought you said this was a Genesis race. Well, it is, because Mega Man 1 through 3 were ported to the Genesis under the name The Wily Wars. Basically, it's a version of the Blue Bomber with upgraded graphics and music. Now, I haven't even had the chance to play it, so I don't know how the controls stack up, but it does seem like it at least looks like a quality experience. And now we have to answer the big question. How do you wrap up a marathon of epic proportions? What if I told you this was a game that Sheem Gabriel, who was barely in second place heading into this game, was world class in? The game's called Shadow Dancer. It's like this adventure-style beat-em-up. I know I just kind of throw genres together sometimes, but it had a lot of room for cool movement, different tech. It was basically like a challenging but not impossible way to end the run. Although this game did look, it almost looked like Ninja Gaiden levels of hard, but you didn't have to beat the entire game. Now, unfortunately, the lead was too great for Sheem to overcome, and so he finished just behind Dagron, who managed to post a sub 3-hour time to win the Sega 16. For the record, that's like 12 minutes per game for the entirety of the race. Granted, you didn't have to beat all of the games, but to call that remarkable feels like an understatement. I'm out of breath just describing it to you, let alone watching it or even running in this thing. I cannot stress enough that it is worth it to go back and check out the VOD on Twitch, which I'm of course going to be linking in the description, because it was a quality afternoon. I got me a big bowl of cereal. I was hanging out, just having a good time. Dagron did end up winning, followed by Sheem, JKL, and Narblast, all runners that I think you've seen as I've been featuring the different games throughout this video. Well, do you know of any other mega races coming up, or is there anything in the speedrun world, I mentioned this earlier, that you'd like for me to kind of cover? Let me know in the comments below, or you can just shoot me a message, because I love being able to showcase different events like this, because the world of speedrunning is phenomenal, and just getting this attention to it, I think, is so necessary. Like, when people come together to enjoy nostalgia, it's just a good time all the way around. Well, I'm YoBGS, and that is going to do it for me. As always, I will see you for the Salty Runback.